Hello everyone and welcome back to my candidate profile videos where I profile the candidates as they enter the race and in the coming months as the race progresses for the 2024 presidential election. I have already profiled candidates as they have entered, and I only make the video once they have officially entered, not before the announcement, nothing like that, only after they announce. Because sometimes you get news out of those announcements. Very rarely, but sometimes you do. And one of the newest entrances into the race, he entered just yesterday, as I'm recording this, June 7th, 2023. Mike Pence entered the race. So he entered on the 7th. I'm recording this on the 8th. On the same night, which was coincidentally his birthday, CNN hosted a town hall event with Pence, and Pence answered questions from voters in Iowa. Iowa. It was hosted and moderated by Dana Bash of CNN. Pence, of course, is a former six-term congressman from Indiana. In his time in Congress, he moved a little moderately up the GOP leadership ladder. But in 2012, instead of running for president or Senate, Pence decided to go for the governorship and won the governor's race in Indiana. During his time as governor, he had some low approval ratings, and that mainly stemmed from his botched handling of a health crisis in a predominantly African American county, a safe needle program, and the really big thing was his handling of a religious liberty bill that had huge pushback and almost cost the state of Indiana billions of dollars in lost revenue, and Pence reversed course at the last minute and did not really handle the fallout well. As 2016 approached, there was really a question of whether or not Pence would be able to survive re-election, and also people still were pondering his name as a potential presidential candidate. Your own state's sick of you. Why don't you, run for president? Please, America, take him off our hands, type deal. But he decided to run for re-election in 2016. That summer, Donald Trump, who by then had become the Republican presidential nominee, was looking for a running mate. And in the primary, Pence had endorsed Ted Cruz. But in his endorsement of Ted Cruz, it was the most lukewarm endorsement you could give. He praised Donald Trump, who went on to win the Indiana primary, and Ted Cruz dropped out shortly. And at that point, Trump became the presumptive nominee. And the Trump campaign, specifically his children, and the head of the campaign at the time, thought that Pence would be a good balance to Trump and a good bridge to evangelical voters. So Trump picks Pence as his running mate. He drops out of running for re-election for governor. The Republicans win Indiana, and they hold on to the governor's mansion with the replacement for Pence. Pence serves 4 years as Trump's vice president. And up until January 6th, there was no daylight between Trump and Pence in public whatsoever. Pence towed the line, was total on message, no matter what Donald Trump said or did. He was a loyal vice president. On January 6th, Donald Trump asked Mike Pence to violate the Constitution, and Mike Pence denied that request. And ever since, the relationship has gotten frosty. Of course, we know what happened on January 6th. A violent mob attacked the Capitol, a domestic terrorist attack that was incited by the then sitting president of the United States. And ever since, Pence has been really somewhat reluctantly to really go after Donald Trump in very stark terms. He has, said that he obviously thinks the Republican Party can pick a better nominee because he's running. But Pence faces some significant hurdles. One, as I said, Pence was facing real challenges back in 2016 to being reelected. Donald Trump has made that point many times, and it's one of the few times Donald Trump is correct. Pence was facing difficulty in his reelection battle in 2016. And the Republican Party may have had to spend money on a governor's race that they normally wouldn't have had to spend money on. Pence is also very conservative. Pence is very hardline on abortion. Of course, we know what happened in 2020 with abortion and candidates that voters viewed as extreme on abortion, and also when abortion referendums were on the ballot. Voters voted down abortion bans all over the country, even in red states like Kentucky and Montana and Kansas. So there's that position that Pence has. He also is for cutting entitlements, basically telling people over 40, you're going to have to work a lot longer. I don't see that as a winning message to really bring in the under 40 voters, and especially considering how especially under 30 voters with a college education are fleeing the Republican Party. Pence would have a hard time, in my opinion, attracting those voters. He's also very extreme on LGBTQ issues, just a whole raft of issues. And in my opinion, Pence might be the most socially conservative candidate in the race. DeSantis is something else. Pence is very socially conservative. And one thing I notice with Pence's speaking style, and this was even when he was vice president, he has a very slow, genteel style of speaking. It still doesn't negate the fact that he is pushing quite unpopular and quite extreme policies. So I don't see Pence being on the stage in Milwaukee being the Republican nominee. Quite frankly, if Donald Trump's the nominee, I don't even think Pence gets a speaking spot at the convention. And, it's an unprecedented run. No vice president in modern times has ever ran against the president that they served with. John Nance Garner in 1940 is the last time. This is over 80 years ago that the last time that this happened. That a vice president ran against the president that they served with for the nomination. And it's never happened with former that I can think of. A former vice president running against a former president that they served with. It's just rare. It doesn't happen. So, bottom line on Pence, his pros. He's very comfortable with evangelical voters, who are one of the core bases of the Republican Party. One of the foundational models of present Republican politics. If evangelical voters don't turn out in high numbers, Republican candidates have a really hard time winning elections, even though they don't represent nearly a majority or even a strong plurality of Americans. Their voting percentage can have disproportional effects. Second, he has experience. He has executive experience. And he wouldn't need on-the-job training. This is arguments that Pence campaign would make. His cons. He's extremely conservative. And his conservative positions are outside of the mainstream of not just America, but in my opinion, they're outside the mainstream of where most Republicans actually are. If you got Republicans to talk honestly about what positions they could realistically get enacted and wouldn't backfire tremendously, Mike Pence is not the candidate you elect to be your standard bearer. So overall, I think Pence will not be the nominee. I think he stays in for a long time. If he does drop out before Iowa and New Hampshire, I would be somewhat surprised. I have joked that his candidacy will be as successful as Dan Quayle's 2000 election. That's a little harsh, I think, because Quayle dropped out really quickly. He wasn't able to generate no fundraising and was really hurt by the fact that George W. Bush was running, who was, of course, the son of George H.W. Bush, who Dan Quayle had served under as vice president. Pence has entered the race, and we will see how the former one-term vice president from the state of Indiana does in his quest to become the next Republican nominee for president. And yeah, we'll see. It'll be an interesting race.